In a courtroom as silent as a tomb, a 12-year-old black boy stood before the judge, the man who held his fate in his hands. Yet, instead of fear, the boy wore a confident smile. "Let's play a game, true or false," the judge declared, his eyes gleaming with challenge. Little did he know he was about to enter an intellectual duel unlike any in his career. Little did he know that the child before him wasn't an ordinary defendant, but a legal prodigy. But could this boy truly win in a game where the rules were never in his favor? Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. Share your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another inspiring story tailored just for you. The story begins. In the courtroom, there was absolute silence. The judge, an elderly man with silver hair and thick glasses, leaned forward, staring intently at the 12-year-old black boy standing confidently before him. A slow smile spread across his face as he gently tapped his gavel on the desk. "All right, son," the judge began, his voice a mix of amusement and severity. "Let's play a game. True or false? I'll ask you some questions and we'll see if you can outsmart me. Sound fair?" A murmur of laughter rippled through the courtroom. The boy, dressed in an ill-fitting, neatly pressed suit, did not smile. He simply nodded, his sharp brown eyes locked on the judge's. The judge cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "First question," he started, his smile widening. "The law states that a person is innocent until proven guilty. True or false?" The boy didn't blink. "False," he replied. The courtroom gasped. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And why is that?" "Because in reality, people are presumed guilty first and have to prove their innocence," the boy stated calmly. "Especially if they're black." The judge's smile faltered slightly. He shifted in his seat, glancing at the audience in the courtroom. Some people muttered in agreement while others whispered in astonishment. "All right," the judge continued, his voice slightly less jovial. "Let's try another one. A judge must be completely fair and impartial in every case. True or false?" The boy's lips curled into a knowing smile. "False." The judge frowned. "Explain." "Because judges are human," the boy replied smoothly. "And humans have biases whether they admit it or not. Like how you've already decided I'm just an ignorant kid. That's your bias." The courtroom erupted in astonished whispers. The judge's face flushed crimson. His gavel slammed down with a sharp crack. "Order," he barked. The courtroom fell silent again. The judge took a deep breath, massaging his temples. He stared at the boy, suddenly realizing this was not the simple game he'd anticipated. He had underestimated the boy, and now he had a sinking feeling he was about to lose. Earlier that day, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras clicking as they whispered amongst themselves. The case had captured the city's attention: a wrongful arrest, a child prodigy, and a judge known for his harsh sentences. The 12-year-old boy, Ethan Jackson, stood between his public defender and his mother, his hands clasped neatly in front of him. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't scared. In fact, he looked perfectly calm. The arrest was a mistake, or so the police wanted everyone to believe. Ethan had been sitting in the public library when officers stormed in, accusing him of involvement in a recent robbery. The evidence, a vague description of a black boy in a hoodie. No one cared that Ethan was reading a book on constitutional law when they dragged him away in handcuffs. The video of his arrest had gone viral. People were outraged, but outrage didn't equal justice. Now, Ethan stood before Judge Richard Wallace, a man notorious for delivering severe sentences. The judge peered at him from behind his glasses. "Son, do you understand why you're here today?" Ethan raised his head. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you know what you're being charged with?" "Yes." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Do you have anything to say before we begin?" Ethan hesitated, then spoke. "I'd like to represent myself." A murmur swept through the room. His mother gripped his arm tightly. "Ethan." But the boy shook his head. He had made up his mind. Judge Wallace's eyes gleamed with amusement. "You wish to act as your own counsel?" "Yes." "That's bold." "Intelligent," Ethan corrected. The judge chuckled again. "All right, son. Let's see if you're as smart as you think you are." And so it began. A game, a test, a battle of wits between a seasoned judge and a 12-year-old legal prodigy. The courtroom leaned forward, eager to witness the spectacle unfold. But no one, not even the judge, was prepared for what would happen next. Ethan was about to turn the entire case on its head, and before the judge knew it, he would realize a chilling truth: he was losing control. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. He had expected this to be amusing, a quick lesson in humility for an arrogant child. Instead, Ethan Jackson had turned the courtroom into a chessboard, and Judge Wallace was just realizing he was playing against a grandmaster. All right, Ethan, the judge said, leaning forward. Let's see how well you understand the law since you've chosen to represent yourself. I'll give you the opportunity to make your opening statement. Ethan nodded, stepping forward with the poise of a seasoned attorney. His suit was still too big, but suddenly no one noticed. It was his presence that filled the room, not his clothes. Your Honor, he began, his voice steady. I stand before you today not just as a defendant, but as an example of a flawed system. I was arrested without just cause. I was accused based on nothing more than the color of my skin and the assumption of my guilt. But today, I will prove that the law, your law, was broken, not by me, but by those who arrested me. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Even the reporters stopped typing. The judge's fingers tapped lightly on the desk. That's a strong accusation, son. It's not an accusation, Ethan said, tilting his head. It's a fact. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The judge sighed, glancing at the prosecutor, a tall man in a sharp navy suit. Mr. Callahan, I presume the prosecution is ready to present its evidence. The prosecutor stood up, a slight smirk on his face. He too had underestimated the boy, but he was ready to put him in his place. Of course, Your Honor, Callahan said, stepping forward. The prosecution has surveillance footage placing the defendant near the scene of the crime as well as an eyewitness who has identified the defendant. Ethan didn't flinch. Objection. Judge Wallace raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? On the grounds that being near a crime doesn't equal committing one, Ethan said smoothly. And I'd like to see the so-called evidence footage. The judge nodded. Let's see it. A screen flickered to life in the courtroom. A grainy, black and white video played, showing a shadowy figure in a hoodie walking past a convenience store. It was dark and the person's face was barely visible. This, Callahan said confidently, was taken just minutes before the store was broken into. This individual matches the description given by our eyewitness. Ethan folded his arms. Which description? Callahan frowned. Excuse me. You said I matched the description, Ethan reiterated. So, what is that description? The prosecutor glanced at his notes. The suspect was described as a young black male wearing a hoodie. Ethan let out a slow, deliberate breath. So, to be clear, the only reason I was arrested is because I'm a black kid wearing a hoodie? The courtroom buzzed again. Callahan's jaw tightened. You were in the area and the eyewitness confirmed it. Which eyewitness? Ethan interrupted. Callahan sighed, clearly annoyed. We'll bring them to testify shortly. Ethan nodded. Good, because I have a few questions for them. The judge held up a hand. Let's move on, Mr. Callahan. Do you have any stronger evidence than a blurry video and a vague description? Callahan hesitated, then shook his head. Not at this time, Your Honor. Ethan smiled slightly. How interesting. The judge leaned forward. All right, Ethan, since you're so confident, why don't you tell us where you were at the time of the crime? Ethan adjusted his tie. Gladly. I was at the city library. Callahan scoffed. Can you prove that? Yes, Ethan said. And I can prove something even more interesting. The judge narrowed his eyes. And what's that? Ethan turned to the court clerk. Your Honor, I'd like to submit my library checkout record as evidence. A small murmur rippled through the courtroom. Callahan frowned. What's that supposed to prove? Because, Ethan said, not only was I at the library, but I checked out a book at the exact time the store was robbed. He turned to the judge. The timestamp is printed on the receipt. It's irrefutable proof that I wasn't there. The judge's lips pressed into a thin line. Bring up that document. The courtroom watched as the clerk handed the receipt to the judge. He scanned it quickly, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he sighed. This receipt shows you checked out a book at 8:42 p.m. Exactly, Ethan said. And the store was robbed at 8:40 p.m. There's no way I could have done it. Callahan's face paled. Ethan turned to the prosecutor, his voice calm but firm. You arrested me without any real evidence. You brought me here on nothing but assumptions, and now your entire case is falling apart because you underestimated me. The judge exhaled, rubbing his temples. All right, let's take a short recess. We'll reconvene in 20 minutes. He banged his gavel as everyone stood up to stretch their legs. The courtroom doors burst open and a police officer rushed in, his face flushed with urgency. Your Honor, he called, panting. We just received a report. The real suspect has been caught, and he confessed. The room froze. All eyes turned to Ethan. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. A heavy silence filled the courtroom. The officer, still out of breath from his dash, held up a yellow folder. The real suspect had been apprehended while breaking into another store just 15 minutes ago. Under interrogation, he confessed to both crimes, including the one Ethan was accused of. Judge Wallace stared at the officer, then slowly turned to Ethan. The 12-year-old prodigy stood tall, his face unreadable. Known all along, the judge tapped his fingers on the desk, his expression darkening. Officer, are you telling me we brought this boy to trial for a crime someone else just confessed to? The officer shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Your Honor. A buzz erupted through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and Ethan's mother clutched her chest, overcome with emotion. Callahan, the prosecutor, clenched his jaw. He had been so sure, so arrogant, now he looked like a fool. Judge Wallace exhaled through his nose, clearly exasperated. Mr. Callahan, do you have any explanation for this? Callahan opened his mouth, but hesitated. There was no explanation that wouldn't make him look incompetent. His case had just crumbled before his eyes. The judge turned back to Ethan, his voice now softer, but carrying a new note, respect. Ethan, you knew, didn't you? Ethan nodded. I knew I was innocent. I just needed time to prove it. The judge sighed, rubbing his temples. This is a debacle. He took a long breath, then sat up straight. The charges against Ethan Jackson are officially dropped. This case is dismissed. Cheers erupted from the back of the courtroom. Ethan's mother rushed forward, embracing him tightly. Oh, my baby, I knew you'd prove them wrong, she sobbed into his shoulder. Ethan hugged her back, but his mind was still working. He had won, but something was off. The police had arrested him too easily, the prosecutor had pressed too hard with almost no real evidence, and now, just as he was about to unravel the case, the real suspect was caught too conveniently. Something wasn't right. The judge banged his gavel, restoring order to the room. Court is adjourned. But just as everyone began to gather their belongings, Ethan spoke up. Wait. Everyone turned to look at him. The judge frowned. Ethan, the case is over. You're free to go. I know, Ethan said, but I have a question for the officer. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Yes. Ethan narrowed his eyes. You said the real suspect was caught just 15 minutes ago? That's right, the officer replied. And he confessed immediately. The officer hesitated. Yes. Ethan tilted his head. That's odd. The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Wallace leaned forward. Why is that odd? Because confessions don't usually happen that fast, Ethan said. A suspect caught red-handed might deny it, ask for a lawyer, or try to negotiate. But this person confessed immediately. It doesn't make sense. Callahan jumped in, desperate to end this nightmare. Ethan, the case is over. You're free to go. Let it go. But Ethan shook his head. No, something's wrong, and I want to know what it is. His mother tugged on his arm. Sweetie, we can go home now. Don't push it. But Ethan was already turning back to the officer. Where was this suspect apprehended? The officer swallowed. On 5th Street. Ethan's eyes narrowed. 5th Street? That's on the other side of town. The officer nodded. Yes, but... Ethan interrupted. So, how could he be in two places at once? A wave of astonishment rippled through the courtroom. Judge Wallace's eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean, Ethan? Ethan turned to the judge, his mind racing. If he was caught on 5th Street breaking into a store, that means he was in the middle of committing another crime. So, when would he have had time to confess to the first robbery? The officer's face paled. Ethan pressed closer. And if he did confess, what exactly did he say? The officer licked his lips, now looking very nervous. He said he did it. Ethan stared at him. Did he give any details? The officer hesitated. Not really. Did he mention the name of the store? Ethan pressed. The officer shifted uncomfortably. No, not specifically. Ethan folded his arms. Then that's not a confession. It's a cover-up. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Wallace's expression darkened. Officer, who ordered you to say this? The officer stiffened. I was just told by my superiors that the case was closed. Who are your superiors? Ethan asked. The officer's mouth tightened. Judge Wallace banged his gavel. You will answer the question. The officer flinched. But before he could finish, the back doors of the courtroom burst open and two more officers stormed in, their faces grim. One of them, a tall, burly man with a badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, spoke first. That's enough, he said, his voice like steel. This case is closed. Everyone needs to go home. Ethan's heart pounded. Something was very, very wrong. Judge Wallace frowned. Who are you? Captain Reynolds, the man said coldly. And I'm here to make sure this doesn't go any further. The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Ethan swallowed. He had stumbled onto something bigger than he imagined, and now powerful people didn't want him digging any deeper. Judge Wallace's face turned to stone. Are you telling me a police captain is stepping into my courtroom to obstruct justice? Reynolds didn't blink. I'm telling you this is bigger than one case. Let it go. The judge stood up, his anger barely contained. Get out of my courtroom. Reynolds smiled coldly. "Be careful, Your Honor. Some cases aren't meant to be opened." Then he turned and walked out, his officers following. The doors slammed shut behind them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan exhaled, his mind reeling. He had won his case, but he had also just stumbled onto something much bigger, something dangerous, and now the real fight was just beginning. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with tension. Everyone had seen it, the way Captain Reynolds had walked in like he owned the place, the way he had tried to shut everything down with a few words. But Ethan Jackson wasn't the kind of kid to back down. He had spent years reading law books, understanding the rules, and learning how the system worked, and if there was one thing he was sure of, it was this: when someone tells you to stop looking, it means you're close to the truth. Judge Wallace sat rigid in his chair, his fingers gripping the armrests, his sharp eyes staring at the doors where Reynolds had just exited. Ethan stepped forward. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear. "You saw what just happened, didn't you?" The judge turned to him. "Yes, Ethan, I did." The courtroom was silent. Callahan, the prosecutor, looked uneasy. The reporters in the back were scribbling notes as fast as they could. Then the judge sighed, rubbing his temples. "But Ethan, listen to me carefully." He looked directly into the boy's eyes. "This isn't just a case anymore. This is something else, and it's dangerous." Ethan squared his shoulders. "Then we have to do something about it." His mother grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, please. We won the case. Let's just go home before something bad happens." Ethan turned to her. "Mom, something bad already happened. I was arrested for no reason. They wanted to put me in jail without any evidence. And now the police are trying to cover up the truth." He shook his head. "I can't just walk away." Judge Wallace looked at him for a long moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "You're really not going to let this go, are you?" Ethan shook his head. The judge leaned back in his chair. "All right then. But if we're going to do this, we have to be smart. We need evidence. Real evidence that something bigger is going on." Ethan nodded. "Then we start with the confession." Callahan scoffed. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Ethan. The case is over. You won. Why are you still digging?" Ethan turned to him, his face unreadable. "Because I know you know." Callahan's smug expression wavered. "Excuse me? You knew this case was weak," Ethan said. "You knew the evidence against me was garbage. Yet you still pressed on. Why?" Callahan's face flushed. "I was just doing my job." "No," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You were doing someone else's job. Who told you to make sure I lost?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Callahan's jaw tightened. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand how the system works." But Judge Wallace didn't stop Ethan. Instead, he leaned forward. "Actually, I think he understands better than most." Callahan swallowed. He looked nervous. Ethan continued. "The so-called confession happened too fast. The real suspect was caught at the perfect time. And now a police captain just walked into the courtroom and tried to shut everything down." He folded his arms. "That's not a coincidence. That's a cover-up." Callahan's face paled. "This is insane." Judge Wallace tapped his fingers on the desk. "Mr. Callahan," he said in a low voice, "answer the boy's question. Did anyone pressure you to make sure Ethan was convicted?" Callahan licked his lips. I can't talk about that." Ethan smiled slightly. "So, that means there is." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Reporters murmured, cameras flashed. Callahan's hands clenched into fists. I need to go," he said, grabbing his briefcase. But before he could take a step, the judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Callahan, you will sit down," Judge Wallace commanded. Callahan froze. He hesitated, then slowly sat back down, his hands trembling. Ethan's heart pounded. He was so close. To unravel everything, Judge Wallace turned to the officer who had delivered the initial confession. "Officer, I want the full report on this so-called confession immediately." The officer swallowed. I don't have it with me." "Then go get it," the judge snapped. "We're not leaving until we see it." The officer hesitated, then nodded quickly and rushed out of the room. Ethan exhaled, his mind racing. He had expected to clear his name today. He hadn't expected to stumble onto something so much bigger. Judge Wallace banged his gavel again. We'll take a 30-minute recess while we wait for that report. This court is not adjourned. Everyone stood up, stretching, whispering. Ethan turned to his mother. See, I told you something was wrong. She rubbed her temples. Sweetie, you're going to give me a heart attack. Ethan gave a small smile, but he still couldn't relax. He stepped out of the courtroom, heading towards the water fountain in the hallway. He needed a moment to think. But as soon as he touched the button, a hand gripped his shoulder. Ethan tensed. He slowly turned around. Captain Reynolds stood there, his face cold. You have no idea what you're playing with, kid. Ethan swallowed, but he didn't look away. Reynolds leaned in, his voice a whisper. If you're smart, you'll drop this right now. Ethan forced himself to stand tall. And if I don't? Reynolds smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Then you might not make it home. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Reynolds released his shoulder and walked away as if nothing had happened. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had just been threatened, and now he knew one thing for sure. Whatever was going on, whatever they were trying to hide, it was bigger than he had imagined, and they were willing to do anything to keep him quiet. Ethan stood rooted to the spot by the water fountain, his heart pounding. Captain Reynolds' words echoed in his head. Then you might not make it home. It wasn't a joke, it wasn't an empty threat. The way Reynolds said it, his cold smile, his dead eyes, meant he was serious. Ethan swallowed, forcing himself to breathe. He had read about corruption, about cover-ups, but he never thought he would live through one. Now it was real, and he was in danger. He turned back towards the courtroom, his feet moving faster than his thoughts. He needed to tell someone, Judge Wallace, his mother, anyone who would listen. But as soon as he reached the courtroom doors, a voice screamed in his head, "Wait, think." Reynolds had threatened him in a public hallway, which meant one of two things. Reynolds was reckless, or Reynolds knew no one would believe Ethan. Ethan's hands clenched. He needed proof, he needed a plan. Taking a deep breath, he turned away from the door and quickly walked towards the courthouse exit. He wasn't running, he was hunting. Outside, the afternoon sun was harsh. Ethan scanned the parking lot, his mind working at full speed. Reynolds was part of something bigger, that much was clear. The confession was fake, the trial was rushed, and now a police captain was personally trying to intimidate him. Ethan had to find out what they were hiding. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, "Meet me at the library, urgent." He sent the message to his best friend, Cody, then started walking. He didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street, or the man inside watching him. The library was almost empty when Ethan arrived. The smell of old books and ink filled the air, a comforting scent amidst all the chaos. Cody was already there, sitting at their usual table in the back. "You better have a good reason for dragging me here, bro," Cody said, leaning forward. "I was in the middle of a game." Ethan sat down. "I need your help." Cody blinked. "Wait, you need my help?" "The boy genius needs help." Ethan didn't smile. "It's serious." Cody nodded. "All right, what's going on?" Ethan lowered his voice. "I think the cops are covering something up, and I think they're willing to put me in jail to keep it secret." Cody stared. "Wait, what?" Ethan quickly explained everything. The rushed case, the fake confession, Captain Reynolds' threat. When he finished, Cody let out a low whistle. "Damn, you should leave town." Ethan shook his head. "No, I need to find out what they're hiding." "You always have to make things difficult, don't you?" Cody sighed, running a hand over his face. Ethan gave a slight smirk. "You wouldn't be my friend if I didn't." Cody snorted. "True." He leaned forward. "All right, what's the plan?" Ethan exhaled. "First, we find out who this real suspect is, the one they caught." Cody nodded. "You think it's a fake name, or a fake person?" Ethan rubbed his chin. "Could be both, but I have an idea." He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, "Juvenile arrest records, city database." A login page popped up. Cody leaned over, reading the screen. You do realize you need official login credentials for this, right?" Ethan didn't answer. He just opened another app. Cody's eyes widened. "Bro, no way. You're hacking the police database." "Not hacking. Ethan said, typing furiously. Just borrowing access. Cody whistled. You're gonna get arrested again. Ethan ignored him, his fingers flying. Seconds later, he was in. A list of recent arrests appeared on the screen. He scrolled quickly, and then there it was. Suspect Nathaniel Brooks, 19, charges. Robbery, confession. Yes. Ethan clicked on the file, but instead of a detailed report, there was almost nothing. No mugshot, no fingerprints, just a name and a confession. Cody frowned. That's weird, right? Ethan nodded. Super weird. He scrolled down until he found something even stranger. Nathaniel Brooks had been arrested 1 hour before the robbery took place. Ethan's blood ran cold. Cody grabbed his arm. Wait, you're saying? Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. They arrested him before the crime happened. Cody finished the sentence for him. They framed him. The two boys looked at each other. Then Cody grabbed his phone. We have to tell someone. But before Ethan could answer, a new message popped up on his screen. From a blocked number. Stop digging or else. Ethan's stomach tightened. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. Through the library window, a black SUV parked across the street was watching them. Ethan grabbed Cody's arm. We have to go now. Cody saw the SUV and swallowed. Yeah, good idea. The two boys jumped up and rushed towards the back exit. They didn't see the man in the SUV pick up a walkie-talkie. They're moving. Follow them. And so the chase began. Ethan and Cody slipped out the library's back door, their hearts pounding. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows down the alleyway. Cody grabbed Ethan's arm. Dude, we're in some serious trouble now. Ethan didn't argue. He could feel it, the weight of something much bigger pressing down on them, something dangerous. The black SUV hadn't moved yet, but Ethan knew it wouldn't be long before they were followed. He turned to Cody. We need to get somewhere safe. Cody nodded. Yeah, but where? Ethan's mind raced. His house? No, too obvious. The police had been there when they arrested him. Cody's house? Same problem. Then an idea sparked. My uncle's barbershop, Ethan said. Cody frowned. The one on 12th Street? Yeah, he closes late and he's got security cameras everywhere. If they follow us there, we'll have proof. Cody hesitated. Dude, I don't know. This is like a spy movie. And in spy movies, guys like us don't make it to the end. Ethan tried to smile. Then let's make sure we do. Cody sighed. Fine, but if I die, I'm haunting you. Ethan nodded. Fair deal. Now let's go. They took off running, cutting through back streets, avoiding main roads. Ethan's heart pounded with every step, but when he glanced back, the SUV was gone. Cody noticed too. I don't like this. Neither did Ethan. They had been followed, but now they were being hunted. The barbershop was on the corner of 12th and Main, a small brick building with a blinking neon sign that read Jackson's Barbershop. Ethan tapped on the glass door. After a few seconds, his uncle, Uncle Jackson, poked his head out. His thick beard was streaked with silver and his tired eyes widened when he saw Ethan. Boy, what are you doing out so late? Uncle T, we need to come in. It's important. Uncle Jackson frowned but unlocked the door, letting them in. As soon as the door closed, Ethan turned to his uncle. Someone's after us, he said, his voice low. Uncle Jackson's face hardened. Who? Ethan hesitated. The cops. Uncle Jackson stiffened. You serious? Ethan nodded. Uncle Jackson sighed, rubbing his face. Get inside. The shop smelled of aftershave and fresh cuts. Clippers still sat on the counter, an old jazz tune playing from the radio. Uncle Jackson led them into his office, closing the door behind them. All right, he said. Talk. Ethan told him everything, the Rush trial, the fake confession, Captain Reynolds' threat, and now the mysterious SUV. When he finished, Uncle Jackson looked furious. That's why I don't trust none of them, he muttered, shaking his head. They do what they want, and when they get caught, they just cover it up. Ethan exhaled. I need proof, something solid, something that can take them down. Uncle Jackson thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. I got a guy, he said. Cody's eyes widened. You got a guy? Does everyone have a guy? Uncle Jackson stated, mine happens to be very good at finding things people want to hide. He dialed a number and waited. After a few rings, someone picked up. A deep voice answered. Who's this? It's T, Uncle Jackson said. I need a favor. The voice on the other end paused. What kind of favor? Uncle Jackson glanced at Ethan. I need someone to look into a name, Nathaniel Brooks, arrested for robbery. I need to know if he exists. The man on the phone chuckled softly. Oh, that sounds messy. It is, Uncle Jackson said. Can you help or not? The voice hummed. Give me an hour. Then the line went dead. Ethan exhaled. Now we wait. Uncle Jackson nodded. Yeah, and in the meantime, we stay put. But outside, something was moving. Cody saw it first, his face paling. Ethan. Ethan turned. Through the blinds, under the streetlight, the black SUV was parked across the street, waiting, watching. Cody swallowed. Okay, new plan. We die here? Ethan's stomach tightened. They weren't just being followed, they were trapped. The next hour felt like an eternity. The SUV didn't move, no one got out, it just sat there. Then Uncle Jackson's phone rang. The deep voice spoke. We have a problem. Uncle Jackson frowned. What problem? The man sighed. Nathaniel Brooks, he doesn't exist. Ethan's blood ran cold. What? No record, no history, no fingerprints. It's like he was made up out of thin air. Uncle Jackson cursed under his breath. Ethan felt his heart pounding. They had arrested a fake person to make sure he was framed. Cody gripped the table. We're dead. Then a loud bang echoed from the front door. A shadow moved outside the shop. Ethan froze. Uncle Jackson grabbed a baseball bat from behind the desk. Stay behind me, he whispered. Then a voice rang out deep, unfamiliar. Ethan Jackson, we need to talk. Ethan's heart pounded. They had found him, and now they were coming in. Another knock echoed. Ethan Jackson, we know you're in there. Ethan swallowed, his hands clenching into fists. Cody was breathing too fast beside him, and Uncle Jackson's grip on the bat was so tight his knuckles were white. Back door, Uncle Jackson whispered. Both of you, go now. Ethan hesitated. But Uncle Jackson grabbed Cody's sleeve and pulled him towards the back. The barbershop had a rear exit. Through the alley, but if they were being followed, it meant they already knew about it. Still, they had no other choice. Uncle Jackson stepped forward, his shoulders squared. Who's asking? He called. A pause, then open the door, Mr. Jackson. This doesn't have to get messy. Ethan and Cody slipped into the back hallway. We're dead, man, Cody muttered. We're really gonna die. Quiet, Ethan whispered, pushing the emergency exit door open. A rush of cold air hit them. The alley was empty for now. Ethan took a deep breath. Okay, on the count of 3, we run. Cody nodded. 1, 2. Before Ethan could say 3, a second SUV roared into the alley, its headlights blazing, filling the narrow space with light. The vehicle skidded to a halt, blocking their only escape route. Ethan pulled Cody back, his heart pounding. They were trapped. Inside, Uncle Jackson didn't flinch. Do you have a warrant? He called, standing just behind the door. Silence. Then another voice, low, smooth, controlled. Mr. Jackson, the voice said. We just want to talk. Uncle Jackson scoffed. Funny. I've heard that one before. Then bang, the door rattled as someone slammed against it. Uncle Jackson took a step back. The voice on the other side remained calm. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Uncle Jackson's grip tightened on the baseball bat. Outside, Ethan's mind raced. They had seconds, maybe less, before the men in the SUV came around, and once they did, Ethan didn't want to think about it. He turned to Cody. Over the fence. Cody stared at him, mouth agape. What? It's our only way out, Ethan said. Go. Cody hesitated, then took a running start and jumped. The chain-link fence rattled as he climbed, his sneakers slipping on the metal. Ethan followed, grabbing the cold steel and pulling himself up. Below them, the SUV doors slammed open. Ethan heard footsteps, then a voice. They're back there. Ethan climbed faster. Hurry. A hand grabbed his ankle. He kicked, but the grip was tight. Panic surged through him. Cody reached the top. Come on, man. Ethan gritted his teeth and kicked again, harder. The grip loosened. Ethan pulled himself up, his fingers scraping against the metal. Then a gunshot rang out. The bullet ricocheted off the fence inches from his hand. Cody yelled, "Oh my God!" Ethan didn't stop, didn't look down. He swung his leg over and jumped. His feet hit the ground, a jolt of pain shooting up his ankle, but he forced himself to move. Cody grabbed his hand. Run. They took off. Behind them, the men from the SUV scrambled over the fence, but Ethan and Cody were gone. They ran until their legs burned, until their lungs felt like they were on fire. They ran through alleys, past flickering streetlights, over sidewalks cracked with age. Finally, they ducked into an old parking lot, hiding behind a row of abandoned cars. They collapsed. Cody gasped. I hate you. Ethan ignored him, peering over the hood of a rusted sedan. No sign of the SUVs, no footsteps for now. Cody sat up, rubbing his face. Dude, did we just run from the FBI? Ethan didn't answer. He was still thinking about the gunshot. They weren't just trying to scare him anymore, they were trying to kill him. Back at the barbershop, Uncle Jackson stood amidst the wreckage of the front door. The men were gone, but the warning was clear. His nephew had gotten too close to something dangerous, and now there was no turning back. The parking lot was silent, save for the sound of Ethan and Cody trying to catch their breath. Ethan's back pressed against the cold metal of an abandoned car, his mind racing. They had almost been killed. This wasn't a game anymore. Cody wiped sweat from his brow. Dude, what the hell did we just escape from? I don't know, but I know one thing. Ethan shook his head. Cody swallowed. What? Ethan looked him straight in the eye. They're willing to kill to keep it a secret. A heavy silence fell over them. Cody gave a nervous chuckle. Man, I thought school was stressful enough. But no, almost getting shot is way worse. Ethan didn't smile. We can't go home, they'll be watching. Cody sighed. Great. So where do we go? Ethan thought for a second, then pulled out his phone. There was only one person to call. 15 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled into the back entrance of the parking lot. A woman in her mid-30s stepped out, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans, her long braids cascading down her shoulders, and her expression unreadable. She pushed her sunglasses up her head. Ethan Jackson, you sure know how to get into trouble. Ethan let out a breath of relief. Aunt Vanessa. Vanessa Jackson was a defense attorney, a good one, one of the best, and right now she was their best chance of survival. Cody blinked. You have a lawyer in the family and you didn't call her sooner? Ethan shrugged. Better late than never. Vanessa folded her arms. Get in the car. Now. Neither of them argued. As soon as the doors closed, Vanessa sped off, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. I heard some things, she said. The cops rushing a weak case, witnesses disappearing, and now my nephew is on the run. Ethan nodded. It's bigger than we thought. The guy they arrested for the robbery, he doesn't exist. Vanessa's lips tightened. They framed you, Aunt V, Ethan continued. And when I started asking questions, they tried to shut me up. Now they're hunting me. Vanessa let out a slow breath. Yeah, I figured it was something like that. Ethan frowned. Wait, you knew? Vanessa didn't take her eyes off the road. I don't know for sure, but I've seen cases like this before. They pick a scapegoat, someone easy to blame, then they close the case quickly before anyone looks too deep. Cody shook his head. But why Aunt Vanessa? Vanessa glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Because Ethan is smart, and smart kids are dangerous to people who like to bend the rules. She turned onto a side street, heading towards the edge of town. Cody leaned forward. Where exactly are we going? Vanessa's jaw tightened. Somewhere safe. Ethan didn't like the sound of that. The fact that Vanessa wouldn't answer meant she didn't trust anywhere in the city. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, run-down motel. The neon sign buzzed weakly in the night. Vanessa parked and turned to face them. Listen carefully, you two are staying here tonight. I paid in cash. No paper trail. No one knows you're here. Ethan folded his arms. What about you? Vanessa sighed. I need to make some calls. Find out how deep this goes. But don't leave this room. Understand? Cody nodded so fast his head almost fell off. Oh, trust me. I'm not planning on going anywhere. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Understood. Vanessa's eyes softened. I know you're scared, but I won't let anything happen to you. Then she reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a gun. Cody almost fell out of his seat. Oh, this just got too real. Vanessa checked the safety, then tucked the gun behind her back. If they're willing to use force, so am I. Ethan stared at her. You really think it's that bad? Vanessa looked him straight in the eye. They shot at you, Ethan, what do you think? Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Yeah, that bad. Inside the motel room, Cody locked the door twice, then collapsed onto the bed. Okay, that's it. Today officially wins worst day ever. Ethan sat by the window watching the parking lot. The motel wasn't great. Faded wallpaper, a buzzing TV, but at least for now, they were safe. Cody sat up. So what now? We wait. Ethan sighed. Cody groaned. I hate that answer. Ethan gave a slight smirk. Me too. Cody rubbed his face. Dude, if I knew being your best friend meant almost getting killed, I would have reconsidered this whole friendship thing. Ethan chuckled. Too late now. But his smile didn't last, because deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Not even close. Then his phone vibrated. A blocked number. A single message. We know where you are. Ethan's stomach tightened, and then the motel lights outside flickered and died. A shadow moved past the window. Someone was here, and this time they weren't knocking. The motel lights flickered and went out completely. Ethan's chest tightened. He could barely see Cody's face in the sudden darkness, but he heard the sharp intake of breath. A shadow moved past the window, then another. Then a click, the doorknob turning. Cody whispered, "Oh no." Ethan moved fast. He grabbed Cody's shirt and pulled him into the bathroom. "Hide," Ethan whispered. Cody didn't argue. They slipped inside, closing the door just as bang! The motel room door burst open. Heavy boots pounded on the floor. Ethan's heart hammered in his ears. He pressed his back against the wall, barely breathing. The bathroom was small, just a sink, a toilet, and a shower with a curtain that didn't offer much cover. Cody's hands were shaking. Ethan could feel it. From the next room, voices whispered, too low to make out. Then footsteps, getting closer. Ethan's mind raced. If they opened the door, they were done. There was nowhere to run. His fingers brushed against the edge of the toilet tank lid. An idea sparked. Carefully, silently, Ethan lifted the lid and handed it to Cody. Cody's eyes widened. Ethan mouthed ready. Cody nodded. Then the bathroom door creaked open. A figure filled the doorway, a tall, burly man in dark clothes, his eyes scanning the small space. Ethan's breath hitched. The man's eyes stopped on the shower curtain. Slowly, he reached out. Ethan tensed. Then Cody swung the toilet tank lid. Crash! The man stumbled back, cursing. Ethan lunged, grabbing the only weapon within reach, the motel's cheap hairdryer. It wasn't much, but he swung it like his life depended on it. Thwack! The man went down, dazed. Cody didn't wait. He bolted out the door, pulling Ethan with him. The motel room was trashed, the bed overturned, drawers pulled out, but Ethan barely had time to process it, because standing near the entrance was another man, and this one had a gun. Ethan and Cody skidded to a halt. The man in black aimed the gun at them. Where do you think you're going? Cody, I don't want to die in a motel room either. Ethan shook his head. Neither did Ethan. His mind raced. The man hadn't shot, which meant something. He wasn't here to kill them, at least not yet. Come with me, the man ordered. Now, Ethan swallowed, his heart pounding. He glanced at Cody, then back at the man. Then a loud crash echoed from outside, tires screeching. The man turned his head, just for a second. Ethan acted. He grabbed the closest thing, a bedside lamp, and threw it with all his might. The man barely reacted before smash! Glass shattered, the gun clattering to the floor. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed Cody's hand and bolted out the door. Headlights blinded them. A car skidded to a halt, the driver's door swinging open. Vanessa, get in, she yelled. Ethan and Cody dove into the car before the doors could even close. Vanessa slammed on the gas, tires squealing, the car rocketing out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, Ethan saw the gunman stumble out, another black SUV pulling up beside him. They weren't done, they were coming after them. Vanessa wasted no time. What did you two do? Ethan took a deep breath. I think we almost got ourselves killed. Cody raised his hands. You think? Vanessa cursed, swerving hard to the right. I told you to stay put. Ethan shook his head. They would have found us anyway. Vanessa didn't argue because she knew he was right. The SUV behind them revved its engine, headlights flashing. Then another appeared, and another, 3 in total. Ethan's stomach tightened. Aunt V, I see them. Vanessa muttered under her breath. The first SUV lunged forward, closing the gap. The second veered to the side, trying to cut them off. Cody gripped his seat. Aunt V, I really don't want to be in a car chase. Vanessa gritted her teeth. Then hold on tight. Then she slammed on the brakes. Ethan's head jerked forward. Cody let out a strangled yell. The first SUV, caught off guard, swerved to avoid them. It slammed into the second SUV. Crash! The two cars spun, crashing into a lamppost. The third SUV kept coming. Vanessa floored it, the car rocketing forward. Ethan's pulse hammered. Did we lose them? Vanessa's jaw was tight. Not yet. She swerved down a side street, then another. Then the road ahead was blocked. More black SUVs waiting. Cody groaned. Are you kidding me? How many of them are there? Vanessa's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Ethan's stomach churned. They were surrounded, and this time there was nowhere to run. Vanessa slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt inches from the black SUVs blocking the road ahead. Behind them, more headlights appeared. Trapped. Ethan's hands clenched, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Cody barely breathed. Well, this is how I die in a car, like I always feared. Vanessa's hands tightened on the steering wheel, her jaw clenched. Stay calm. Ethan swallowed. They're not here to talk, are they? Vanessa didn't answer because they all knew the truth. SUV doors opened, men stepping out, all in black, no badges, no uniforms, just power. Then the last door opened, Captain Reynolds stepping out, his face unreadable. He walked forward, stopping a few feet from Vanessa's car. Then slowly, he raised his hand, signaling them to step out. Vanessa's fingers hovered over the gearshift. Ethan, stay in the car. But Ethan knew they couldn't escape this without answers, and he wanted all of them. Before Vanessa could stop him, Ethan opened the door and stepped out. Cody cursed. Dude, what are you doing? Vanessa hissed. Ethan, but it was too late. Ethan walked towards Reynolds. The street was empty, the only sound the hum of engines. Reynolds looked at him. Brave kid. Ethan stopped. I'm not brave, his voice steady. I'm just not stupid. Reynolds gave a slight smirk. Debatable. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. You tried to frame me. Reynolds shrugged. You were the perfect fit. Ethan's jaw tightened. Why? Reynolds let out a slow breath. You really want to know? Ethan didn't blink. Yes. Reynolds stepped closer. The streetlights made his face look sharper, harder. Because, Ethan, Reynolds said, his voice smooth, you don't belong in the system. You threaten the system. Ethan frowned. What? Reynolds sighed. Smart kids like you see the cracks, the flaws. You ask questions, and questions are dangerous. Ethan swallowed. Reynolds continued, his voice calm, too calm. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running, he said. We need the right kind of criminals, people no one will fight for, people everyone will assume are guilty just by looking at them. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Reynolds tilted his head. What do you think would happen if we put you in jail? Ethan knew the answer. A smart black kid in the system, he would be swallowed whole. No one would ask questions, no one would care. Reynolds gave a slight smile. But instead, you fought back. His eyes darkened. And now you know too much. Ethan's breath hitched. Reynolds turned to his men. Get them. The air shifted. Cody jumped out of the car. Oh my God. Vanessa swung the door open, pulling out her gun. Not a chance. Reynolds didn't seem worried. Put the gun down, Ms. Jackson. You're outnumbered. Ethan's mind raced. He was one step away from disappearing forever, one step away from being buried under lies. He had one chance, one shot, he had to break the system before it broke him. Then an idea sparked, his only chance. Ethan reached into his pocket, not for a gun, not for a weapon, but for his phone, and he hit play. Reynolds' voice echoed through the air. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running. We need the right kind of criminals. The recording was clear. The officers froze. Reynolds' face turned to stone. Ethan's voice was steady. I hit record the moment I stepped out of the car. Reynolds' jaw tightened. Ethan held the phone higher. And right now, this recording is being sent to every journalist I know. Cody grinned. Oh, and guess what? The internet loves corrupt cop scandals. Reynolds' eyes twitched. You think that will stop us? Ethan took a step forward. No, he said, but it will make sure everyone sees you for who you are. Reynolds' men hesitated. The game had changed, the whole world was about to know the truth. Reynolds breathed through his nose, then he smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Well played, he said. Then he turned to his men. Stand down. The officers lowered their weapons. Reynolds looked back at Ethan. This isn't over. Ethan didn't blink. I know. Reynolds gave a slight smirk. Then I'll see you soon. Then Then he stepped back, got into an SUV and drove away. The others followed. Just like that, they were gone. Silence. Cody let out a long breath. Man, that was insane. Vanessa holstered her gun, still tense. Ethan, that was dangerous. Ethan exhaled. I know. You were ready to die for it, weren't you? She looked at him. Ethan swallowed, then nodded. Vanessa's eyes softened, then suddenly she pulled him into a tight hug. Ethan stiffened at first, then let out a relieved breath. Cody clapped his hands. So, can we never do that again? Ethan exhaled. No promises. Cody groaned. I hate you. Ethan smirked. I know. By morning, the recording had gone viral, news stations, blogs, social media. The city exploded with outrage, investigations launched, careers ruined, but Reynolds was gone, no charges, no arrests, vanished. A week later, Ethan sat on the porch watching the sunset. Vanessa sat beside him. You did it. Ethan didn't answer because deep down he knew it wasn't over. Reynolds was still out there, watching, waiting, and one day they would come for him again, but next time he would be ready. A week later, the city was still reeling. News anchors called it the justice system scandal of the decade, protests erupted, people demanded arrests, the mayor held emergency press conferences promising change, but Ethan knew better. The system didn't change, it just hid its cracks better, and the biggest crack of all, Captain Reynolds, had vanished, no arrest, no dismissal, gone. No one knew where, no one knew how, and that was a problem because Ethan knew one thing for sure, Reynolds wasn't done. Ethan sat on the porch, scrolling through news on his phone. Vanessa leaned against the railing beside him, arms crossed. Still thinking about it, aren't you? Ethan didn't look up. Of course. Vanessa sighed. You exposed them, you won. Ethan's jaw tightened. No, I just drove them underground. Don't be naive, when guys like Reynolds get caught, they don't go to jail, they move, they adapt, they wait. Cody stepped onto the porch, soda can in hand. Are you guys seriously doing the whole dramatic brooding thing while I'm just trying to enjoy my day? Ethan finally looked up. Aren't you worried? Cody scoffed. Oh, I'm terrified, but if I stop for even 5 seconds to think about how we almost got killed, I might throw up, so I'm just chilling. Vanessa smirked. Smart strategy. Ethan put his phone down. I don't get it. Reynolds should be in jail, he should be on trial, instead he just disappears. Guys like him always have an escape plan, Vanessa sighed. Cody pointed at Ethan. And guys like him always have to go poking around and make things worse. Ethan didn't deny it because he had already started digging. That night when the house was quiet, Ethan locked his bedroom door and pulled out his laptop. If Reynolds had disappeared, there had to be a trace. Ethan had learned one valuable lesson in the past week. The people who ran the system were sloppy, they assumed no one was watching. Ethan had been watching. He searched government databases, news reports, even hacked into private security feeds, and then it was there. A flight record, one-way ticket, private plane, destination, Washington, D.C. Ethan's stomach tightened. Reynolds hadn't disappeared, he had moved up. Ethan stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He could ignore it, pretend nothing was happening, pretend he was just a normal 12-year-old kid, but that was a lie. He had never been normal, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Ethan sighed, then picked up his phone and called Vanessa. When she answered, her voice was groggy. Ethan, it's 2 a.m. Ethan didn't hesitate. Reynolds is in D.C. Silence, then Vanessa cursed. Send me everything. Ethan was already prepared. She sighed. Okay, I'll pull some strings, but Ethan, I know. Ethan finished. This is dangerous. She sighed. I was going to say you should go to sleep, but yeah, that too. Ethan smirked. No chance. Vanessa muttered something, then hung up. Ethan closed his laptop. He had taken down Reynolds once, now he would finish him for good. The next morning, Vanessa arrived with 2 coffees and a plane ticket. Cody almost choked on his breakfast. Wait, what's happening? Vanessa slid the ticket across the table to Ethan. You in or out? Ethan looked at the ticket. It wasn't just for him, there was a second ticket, Cody's name on it. Cody blinked. Oh no. Ethan smirked. Too late, you're in. Cody groaned, slumping onto the table. I hate you so much, man. Ethan took the ticket. D.C., the capital, the center of power, that's where Reynolds had fled, that's where Ethan was going, because this time he wasn't just playing defense, he was taking the fight to them, and he wasn't leaving until Reynolds paid. The plane landed at Reagan National Airport, and Ethan looked out the window, the skyline of Washington, D.C. stretching out before him, glittering in the morning light. This is it, the final play. Okay, I'm gonna be real, this is officially the craziest thing we've ever done, Cody stretched, yawning. Ethan smirked. And we're just getting started. Vanessa clapped her hands. All right, listen up, we're not tourists, we're here for one reason. Find Reynolds, expose him, and make sure he can never do this again. Cody groaned. Great, just casually toppling government corruption, no big deal. Vanessa turned to Ethan. What do we know? Ethan pulled out his phone, opening the files he had collected. Ed Reynolds flew here on a private jet a week ago, Ethan said. But there's no public record of him since. Cody frowned. So either he's in hiding or someone's hiding him. Ethan finished. Vanessa sighed. Then let's start at the source. She turned towards the rental car. We're going hunting. The drive through DC was nothing like home. Here, power wasn't loud, it was silent, hidden. The city was clean, the buildings gleaming, but Ethan could feel it, the corruption buried beneath all that polish. Cody tapped the GPS. Okay, where exactly are we going? Ethan scrolled through his phone. I traced the plane rental to a private security firm. They handle sensitive government matters. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. As in, we clean up the messes people don't want public. Ethan nodded. And guess who their newest consultant is? He turned the phone around. On the screen was a security badge with Reynolds' face. Cody groaned. Oh my God, this guy got a promotion? Vanessa's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yeah, that's how it works. Ethan sighed. Which means we're not just taking him down. His eyes burned with determination. We're taking down the whole system. They parked a block away from the Helio security building, a sleek glass tower. Ethan surveyed the entrance. Security cameras everywhere. I'm guessing you have some crazy plan, Cody sighed. Ethan grinned. You know me too well. Cody groaned. I hate that I know you. The plan was simple. Ethan would sneak in, Cody would cause a distraction, Vanessa would pull the strings from the outside, and if it worked, they would have everything they needed to end Reynolds for good. Ethan slipped into the employee entrance, utilizing a key card acquired from an unsuspecting guard. Inside, the building was cold, all steel and glass. He moved quickly, low, avoiding cameras. His heart pounded. If he got caught here, there was no turning back, but he had come too far. Meanwhile, Cody did what Cody did best, cause chaos. He walked into the main lobby acting like he owned the place. When a security guard gave him a suspicious look, Cody grinned. Hey, are you guys hiring? I heard you need people for secret government scandal cover-ups. The guard frowned. Sir, you need to leave. Cody nodded. Seriously? Cool, but before I go, who's in charge of the corruption department? The guard's radio crackled. We have a disturbance in the lobby. Cody grinned. Awesome. While security focused on Cody, Ethan slipped into the main server room. Rows of computers glowed softly in the dim light. He plugged in the flash drive and started downloading everything. Emails, transactions, classified files, the truth, all of it. Outside, Vanessa monitored the feeds from her laptop. Her jaw tightened as she scanned the incoming data. This is bigger than we thought, she muttered. Cody peered over her shoulder. How big? Vanessa turned the screen around. It's not just about Reynolds, it's a network, judges, cops, businessmen, even politicians, all connected, all untouchable until now. Ethan's heart pounded as the files finished downloading. He yanked out the flash drive and then the alarms blared. Security had found him. A voice echoed through the intercom. Intruder in the server room. Ethan's blood ran cold. Then a door swung open and there stood Reynolds. The room seemed to shrink. Reynolds smirked, arms crossed. I should have known you wouldn't let this go. Ethan's hand tightened on the flash drive. I don't like loose ends. Reynolds stepped closer. You really think you're walking out of here? Ethan smiled. I don't think, I know. Then Vanessa's voice echoed through his earpiece. Now. Boom, the fire alarm exploded, smoke flooded the hallway, and just like that, the building descended into chaos. Ethan didn't wait, he ran. Reynolds cursed, chasing after him. Security flooded the hallway, but Ethan was faster, dodging, slipping through doors, weaving through offices. Then he saw Cody at the entrance, waving frantically. Go, man, go. Ethan sprinted towards him. Reynolds shouted orders too late. Ethan burst through the door and straight into Vanessa's getaway car. She sped off before the guards could react. Cody slumped into his seat. Man, I think I just had a heart attack. Ethan grinned, panting. He had the files, they had everything, and Reynolds was finished. The next morning, the headlines screamed, corruption exposed. Cops, politicians, and secret network unmasked. The world had seen the truth, people were arrested, careers were ruined, and Reynolds vanished again. A few days later, Ethan sat on the porch, gazing at the sky. Vanessa sat beside him. You did it. Ethan didn't answer because deep down, he knew Reynolds was still out there, and one day they would meet again, but next time, Ethan wouldn't just win, he would end the game for good. The system had tried to break him, but they had forgotten one thing: you can't break something smarter than you, and Ethan Jackson was the smartest of them all. Marcus dared to stand against an unjust system despite all the dangers. If you were in his place, would you dare to do the same? Have you ever been judged unfairly or had to fight to prove the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story can inspire and make a difference. If you find this story meaningful, share it with your friends and family to spread the message of justice, perseverance, and the power of knowledge. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel to not miss the next inspiring stories. Each story is a small step in changing how we see the world. May you always be strong and never stop fighting for what is right. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared for the purpose of spreading humanistic values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any errors, please overlook them with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.